The morning of my daughter's graduation felt like the beginning of a chapter I had been waiting to read my whole life. From the moment she was born, wrapped in a soft hospital blanket and blinking up at me with those wide, searching eyes, I had dreamed of this day, the day she would walk across a stage, in her gown and cap, to receive the diploma that symbolized years of hard work and perseverance. Her name, Emily, was embroidered on the edge of her stole. I had ironed her gown myself, carefully, wanting every crease perfect. As if in the neatness of that gown I could express how proud I was. The house that morning was a swirl of nerves and excitement. Emily was fussing with her hair in the mirror, her younger brother Jacob snapping photos and joking that she looked like a wizard. And I was moving through the kitchen preparing breakfast no one seemed hungry enough to eat. The smell of pancakes hung in the air, golden and warm, but the plates stayed untouched. My husband, Mark, sat at the table with his coffee, unusually quiet. His silence was not new over the years. It had become a part of the atmosphere, like the hum of the refrigerator, but that day, there was a certain weight in it. Something unspoken pressing against my ribs as I tried to breathe. I ignored it, because nothing could ruin this day. Not for me, and certainly not for Emily. She had worked so hard. Late nights with textbooks spread across the dining table, coffee cups piling up, tears when exams seemed impossible, laughter when victories came. She was the first in our family to attend university, and now here she was, walking toward a future she had carved for herself. The drive to the university campus was filled with chatter from Jacob, who seemed determined to keep the mood alive. He played music from his phone, something loud and cheerful, and kept pointing out random things outside the window just to make Emily laugh. She did, occasionally, though her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her cap again and again. Mark drove in silence, eyes fixed on the road, jaw tight, and I sat beside him, one hand folded in my lap, the other sneaking glances at him. Something was wrong. I knew it. The lines around his mouth were sharper, the way he gripped the steering wheel harsher. I told myself it was stress, maybe even pride he didn't know how to express. I had long stopped expecting tenderness from him, but I believed that, at least for today, we could stand together as a family. The campus was alive with color and energy when we arrived. Balloons bobbed in the air, families clustered together holding bouquets of flowers. Cameras clicked constantly, and the sound of laughter and applause carried on the warm breeze. I felt tears rising in my throat as I watched Emily walk toward her classmates, her black gown flowing, her cap slightly tilted. She turned back once to wave at us, her face glowing with excitement, and I thought my chest would burst with love. We found our seats in the auditorium, the rows filling quickly with proud parents and relatives. Mark sat stiffly beside me, his arm brushing mine, but offering no warmth. His phone buzzed once, twice, and I noticed the way his eyes flicked down to it, the way his thumb moved quickly across the screen before he slid it back into his pocket. I felt a pang, sharp and bitter, but I shoved it down. Not today. Not now. The ceremony began, the dean's voice echoing through the hall as names were called. Applause rolling like waves. When Emily's name came, I rose to my feet, clapping until my palms stung, shouting her name with a pride so fierce it nearly broke me. She walked across the stage, every step steady, her smile radiant, and for a moment everything was perfect. The years of sacrifice, the long nights, the arguments, the silences, all of it faded in the light of that single walk across the stage. But perfection is fragile. It can shatter in an instant. After the ceremony, we gathered outside where families were hugging their graduates, posing for photos, tossing caps into the air. I held Emily tightly, kissed her cheek, and whispered how proud I was. Jacob hugged her too, nearly lifting her off the ground, both of them laughing. I turned to Mark, waiting for him to say something, to show even a sliver of pride. But instead, he cleared his throat, his face pale, and said words that cracked my world open. Asterisk, I'm leaving. Asterisk, the noise of the crowd seemed to fade, replaced by a roaring in my ears. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. I stared at him, my smile frozen, Emily's laughter dying as she caught the expression on my face. Asterisk, what? My voice came out strangled. Then asterisk, I'm leaving, he repeated, louder this time, his eyes sweeping across the small circle of people who had gathered nearby other families. A few of Emily's friends, even Jacob standing wide-eyed and silent. I can't do this anymore. I don't love you. I haven't for a long time, and I won't pretend today, not even for this. Asterisk, gasps rippled around us. Emily's cap slipped from her hand and hit the ground. Jacob's mouth fell open. My knees weakened, and for a terrifying second, I thought I might collapse right there on the pavement. Asterisk, Emily's voice, trembling but sharp, cut through the silence. Dad, are you serious today? You're saying this today? Asterisk, Mark's face twisted, a strange mix of anger and weariness. I can't keep lying. I won't. Asterisk, the tears that had been joyful only minutes earlier now blurred my vision with pain. I couldn't understand. How could he choose this moment, this sacred milestone, to break us apart? He could have waited. He could have said nothing. But instead, he had torn through the fragile fabric of our family in the cruelest way imaginable. Asterisk, I wanted to scream, to hit him, to demand answers, but my throat closed around the words. All I could do was stare at him, my heart pounding, my mind trying to grasp the reality of what he had just said. Asterisk, Emily bent to pick up her cap, her hands trembling, her face pale. Jacob muttered something under his breath, a curse, his fists clenched at his sides. People were staring. Whispers swirled through the crowd. My daughter's graduation, a day meant to be remembered with joy, had become a spectacle of humiliation. Asterisk, Mark didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He just stood there, arms crossed, jaw set, as if daring us to challenge him. Asterisk, something inside me broke then. But something else also stirred, a strength I didn't know I still had. I reached for Emily's hand, squeezing it tightly, and whispered, "Don't let him ruin this for you." Asterisk, her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Asterisk, we tried to move past it, tried to take the photos, to smile through the pain. But the shadow of his words loomed over everything. He hovered nearby, his presence like a storm cloud, silent but heavy. Every time I looked at him, I saw a stranger. Asterisk, the drive home was unbearable. Jacob sat in the back, muttering angrily under his breath. Emily staring out the window, her cap on her lap, her gown bunched in her hands. I sat in silence, my body rigid, my heart screaming. Mark drove as if nothing had happened, his face calm, almost relieved. Asterisk, when we pulled into the driveway, Emily got out first, slamming the door behind her. Jacob followed, his eyes blazing. I sat still, my hand on the door handle, unable to move. Finally, I turned to Mark. Asterisk, why? My voice was barely a whisper. Asterisk, he looked at me then, and for the first time in years, I saw a flicker of emotion, guilt, maybe, or regret, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Because I'm done pretending, he said simply. Asterisk, I got out of the car, my legs trembling, my body numb. Inside the house, Emily had gone to her room. Jacob was pacing in the kitchen, and the silence between us all was deafening. Asterisk, that night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, the sound of my daughter's muffled sobs echoing through the walls. My husband, my partner of 20 years, was a stranger beside me, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. Asterisk, but I didn't know then, as I stared into the dark. that the worst was yet to come. I didn't know that within days, the same man who had ripped apart our family would be the one screaming, his voice filled with terror as the truth unraveled around us. Asterisk. The days that followed Emily's graduation blurred together like a storm I couldn't escape. The air in the house was thick with silence, broken only by the sound of doors slamming, muffled cries, or Jacob's angry mutterings. Emily barely spoke to anyone, though sometimes I would find her sitting at the kitchen table staring at her diploma, her eyes swollen from crying, as if the achievement she had fought so hard for had been poisoned. Jacob, fiercely protective of his sister, refused to even look at Mark. And me, I moved through the house like a ghost, carrying the weight of betrayal in every breath. Mark stayed, though his presence felt like an insult. He slept in the guest room, came and went at odd hours, and spoke only when necessary. There was no attempt at explanation. No apology for the way he had ripped open our lives at the very moment we were meant to celebrate. Every time I looked at him, 100 questions clawed at my throat, but I couldn't bring myself to ask. Something in his eyes told me the answers would only hurt more. It was on the 4th night, long after the children had gone to bed, that I finally broke. I found him in the kitchen, sitting in the dim light with a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand. Why now? I whispered, my voice trembling with anger and exhaustion. Why on her graduation day? You could have told me any other time, but you chose that moment to humiliate us all. His eyes were bloodshot, his face unshaven, but he didn't flinch. Because if I didn't do it then, I never would have. I needed to be free. Free? The word burned my tongue. You call destroying your daughter's happiest day freedom? His jaw tightened. You don't understand. Then make me understand. But he didn't. He just sat there, staring into his glass, silent. That silence told me more than any explanation could. He wasn't leaving for some noble reason, some journey of self-discovery. He was leaving because there was someone else. I felt it in my bones, the way his phone buzzed at odd hours, the way his eyes darted away from mine, the relief etched into his features the moment he confessed. I should have confronted him then, demanded the truth, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe it was the sinking certainty that no matter what he said, nothing would undo the damage. The next morning, Emily refused to come down for breakfast. Jacob stormed off to school without eating. I sat at the table staring at the untouched toast, my hands trembling. Mark walked in, buttoning his shirt, looking almost cheerful. The contrast made bow rise in my throat. Don't expect me to cover for you. I spat. He raised an eyebrow. Cover for me? When people start asking why you destroyed your daughter's graduation. When our families ask what happened, when Emily and Jacob refused to speak to you, I won't lie. They'll know the truth. For the first time. I saw anger flare in his eyes. You think you know the truth, he hissed. You don't know anything. I stood, my hands flat on the table. Then tell me, who is she? His face froze just for a second, but that second was enough. My heart sank. I knew it. I whispered. He didn't confirm, didn't deny. He just grabbed his jacket and walked out the door, leaving me standing there with my heart in pieces. The following days were a torment. The whispers started, neighbors noticing his absences, relatives calling to ask why Emily hadn't posted graduation pictures online. Emily shut herself away, refusing to answer calls from friends. Jacob grew more restless, angrier, as though the betrayal had lit a fire in him he didn't know how to extinguish. And me, I felt like I was drowning, trapped between holding my children together and facing the crumbling of my marriage. Then, one night, the screaming began. It was past midnight. The house was quiet, the kind of silence where you can hear the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock. I was drifting in and out of sleep when a sound tore through the night, a raw, guttural scream from the guest room. My body shot upright, heart pounding. Asterisk for a second, I thought I had imagined it, some fragment of a nightmare. But then it came again, louder, filled with terror. Mark's voice. Asterisk. I scrambled out of bed, rushing down the hall, my bare feet slapping against the floor. Emily's door opened at the same time, her eyes wide with fear, Jacob right behind her. Together we burst into the guest room. Asterisk. Mark was on the bed, thrashing violently, his face contorted in agony, his hands clawing at his throat as though invisible hands were choking him. His screams ripped through the air, high and desperate, like an animal caught in a trap. Sweat poured down his face, his eyes bulging with terror as he gasped for air. Asterisk. Dad. Emily screamed, rushing to his side. What's happening? Asterisk. I froze in the doorway, shock rooting me in place. Jacob grabbed his father's arms, trying to still him. But Mark fought against an enemy none of us could see. Asterisk. Make it stop. He howled, his voice breaking. Please, God, make it stop. Asterisk. What? What's happening? I cried, finally rushing forward, my hands trembling as I tried to steady him. His body shook violently, his nails scratching at his own skin, leaving angry red marks. Asterisk. They're here, he screamed, eyes rolling in terror. She knows. She knows everything. Asterisk. His words chilled me to the bone. Asterisk. Who knows? I demanded, gripping his face in my hands. What are you talking about? Asterisk. But his eyes darted wildly, unfocused, his body convulsing as he let out another scream so piercing it felt like glass, shattering in my ears. Asterisk. I called for Jacob to get my phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to dial emergency services. But just as suddenly as it began, the thrashing stopped. Mark collapsed against the pillows, chest heaving, eyes wide and glassy with fear. Asterisk. We all stood there, breathless, staring at him. The room reeked of sweat, the sheets tangled around him like restraints. Emily was crying, Jacob was pale, and I felt my own heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Asterisk. When the paramedics arrived, Mark refused to go. He clutched my arm, his voice hoarse, begging me not to let them take him. They'll find me, he whispered. They'll know I talked. Asterisk. I didn't understand. None of us did. But something in his eyes' raw, unfiltered terror made me realize this was more than a nightmare. Something was unraveling, something hidden, and it was dragging him into madness. Asterisk. That night, after the paramedics left and Mark finally fell into a restless sleep, I sat in the living room with Emily and Jacob. None of us spoke for a long time. The clock ticked, the wind rattled the windows, and the weight of unanswered questions pressed down on us. Asterisk. Finally, Jacob broke the silence. He's hiding something. Something big. Asterisk. Emily nodded, her face pale. When he was screaming, he said, she knows everything. Who was he talking about? Asterisk. I didn't answer, because deep down, I feared the truth. I feared that the betrayal was far worse than an affair. That whatever secret he carried was dangerous enough to shatter not only our family, but everything we thought we knew about him. Asterisk. The following days proved me right. Mark's behavior grew erratic. He jumped at shadows, muttered under his breath, refused to leave the house after dark. He accused me of following him, accused Emily of spying on his phone, accused Jacob of listening at his door. His paranoia was suffocating. And yet beneath it all, there was a thread of guilt, a sense that he knew his time was running out. Asterisk. One evening, when the children were upstairs, I confronted him. Asterisk. Whatever it is, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. You need to tell me, because if you don't, it's going to destroy us all. Asterisk, his eyes filled with tears, his voice breaking as he whispered, "It's already too late." Asterisk, and then he told me, asterisk, the affair. Yes, but not with just anyone. With a woman connected to his work, someone who had secrets of her own. Money had changed hands, favors had been exchanged, and in his desperation for escape, he had tangled himself in something far darker than infidelity. Now, that woman or the people behind her were threatening him, threatening us. His confession at the graduation had not been about freedom, but about fear. He thought by cutting ties, by breaking away, he could protect us. But instead, he had exposed us. Asterisk, I sat there, numb, as the pieces fell into place. His silence, his anger, his terror, it all made sense now. He hadn't been leaving because he didn't love us. He had been leaving because he was running from something that wouldn't let him go. Asterisk, and when I looked into his eyes, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The screaming that had ripped through our house was only the beginning. Asterisk.